Hey, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this extra relaxing drawing tutorial that was requested by one of my patrons, I will show you in detail how to draw a chess figure with charcoals and soft pastels. You will be able to see all the layering steps, learn how to create a wooden texture, as well as see how to create beautiful highlights and shadows to create a 3D illusion, as well as how to draw a reflection on a shiny surface. You can choose to follow along with this full step-by-step art class or just sit back and relax. But whatever you do, make sure to watch till the end, as I will show you an amazing hand-carved chess set from Russia. But for now, let's have a look at the materials for this tutorial. For this video, you would need some soft pastels. You can use anything that you already have, and if you don't have it but you would like to try some, you can go and get yourself a set like this. They're not very expensive, they're very affordable, but as always I would link the materials that I use under the video. I will also be using soft pastel pencils. You might also need your regular pencil and eraser and some smudge sticks. These are not necessary. I do have a video on some substitutes that you can find, like cotton swabs and things like that, or a little bit of a tissue, or even just a finger, so you could do that. Another material you would need is the paper. Now this is just a pastel paper. It's nothing too expensive, just a normal sort of a sheet of pastel paper. You can use anything really. For this video it would be best to use something that's not white or black, but something in the middle, so something gray or maybe something brownish and so on. And just because we will be using darker and lighter colors at the same time. Okay, to start with, I am going to use just a normal pencil to structure the composition. Now the composition will be based around a one-point perspective, because I would like to include the chessboard, and as you all know, chessboard consists of parallel lines. So if you would like to know more about the one-point perspective, I already have a video that goes in depth and explains how it happens, why it happens, where you can find it. I will link it in the cards in the corner there, so you can check it out. But for now, let's stick to what I want to do here. So I would like to have really nice large squares. So I want my square to be something like that. Now because it's a one-point perspective, there'll be kind of like a vanishing point. It doesn't have to be on your piece of paper, it can be even outside your paper, but we just need to make sure that all of these lines go along that perspective. Maybe not so strong, maybe I'll make it like this. That's why it's good to work it out with a pencil first, so that you can decide what you want to do, whether you want to change things or not. You can use a ruler as well for this, but I do think that the more you try to do things by hand, the better you will get at it, and at the end of the day it's much easier to just do things by hand like that than with the use of the ruler. So these are just approximate lines. Later on they will be erased anyways. The composition probably won't even go that far, but it's good to point it out just to be able to see it better. Now I'm going to mark the horizontal lines. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to make it a little bit more visible for you. I'm just going to go over with this, and I'm going to line up the squares that I would be intending to really work on. So there, hopefully this is a little bit more visible for you guys. I'm going to blur out the outer edges. So what I can do now is I can go ahead and just erase all of the pencil lines that I don't need anymore. Now my next thing is to structure the figure, the chess figure. For that, I'm going to create a central line, which will also show me how tall I would like my chess piece to be. So I'd say I'd go for something that's tall. Now I'm going to mark the bottom as well. Again, if you would like to know how to structure the elliptical objects, I also have a video for that. It's like one of my first ones, I think, where you can see me explaining in depth of how and why things work. So if this is something that interests you, I would like to invite you to watch that video as well. Okay, now I'm going to go for the next step. So I'm going to divide all of these parts and bits and pieces. So here would be the actual top, and it's gonna go up down to here, yeah, something like that. And then here there'll be that sort of a cross kind of a shape as well. And then here is another ellipse, and one just above it as well. And then we build the rest of the body. So now we're going to continue with this, give this a bit of a thickness. I'm going to go over this to make it even more visible on camera shortly. Now with the central line, the beauty of having a central line is that you can compare right and left just to make sure that everything is balanced out. Okay, so ellipses there and there, and even a little one there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just erase some of these structure lines, and I'm going to use brown pastel to just slightly outline it like that, just to make it more visible for you guys. You don't have to do this step if you're following along at home. And we'll deal with the details when it comes to that. So far, I hope you can see the composition quite clearly. So we've got the chess piece on the chessboard. Next, what we want to do is erase, of course, all the pencil lines and start creating our base layer first. If you are enjoying this video, don't forget to check out my Patreon page, where for just $2 a month you can support this channel And for $8 a month you can get extra videos, extra tutorials, extra relaxing long videos that are very, very in-depth, go into proper academical structuring and other very interesting things. You can also go into draws depending on which tier you choose, and even have one-on-one consultations. So don't forget to check it out. Okay, so to start with, I'm going to use my pastels like this, and then I'm going to go onto pastel pencils later on when I am working on more details. So the first ones I want to work on would be white areas on the chessboard. Just very lightly going to do this. Now remember, because there is a square, it actually becomes very handy. You can create straight lines without putting too much effort into this. And so on. So this is the white. Now I'm just gonna go over it a little bit stronger. And I'm going to use the smudge stick to soften and work this into the paper. As I said, you can also use your finger, but it'll be a little bit hard to get the definition, so you can always resort to using maybe a paper towel, rolled up into a nice tip, or maybe a cotton swab or something like that. Remember, these can get quite messy as well. There's a lot of powder that will be floating around, so make sure that you're working somewhere where you don't have the most, beautiful, precious furniture, or wearing, for example, a velvet jacket or something like that. It will wash off, of course, but you will have to deal with the aftermath of being an artist. I really want to haze it out on the outside. We will strengthen these areas later on. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the black squares. For that I'm just going to use a black pastel, and in the same way, just like I did with the white, I'm going to use the, those side ridges on the pastel itself to help me with the creation of these really cool sharp lines. So there we go. Now I'm going to use my smudge stick. Now for when I'm working with graphite, I usually just have, my basic smudge sticks, and I use them for all the works. When you're working with pastels, colors, you want to maybe keep one for your lighter colors, one for the darker, maybe one for reds, so you can have a whole bunch of them without having to worry about cross-contaminating any of the colors. You can always clean them, but it's a hassle as well. So it's easier because they're so cheap. It's easier to just get a pack of these and use them for whatever you want. At this stage, if you go over, say, your areas that you're not supposed to, it's not so much of a big deal. It's more important at the closer to the end of your artwork that you would really want to make sure that everything's very, very careful, done very carefully. But at this stage, you don't want to deliberately go over areas you're not supposed to, but if that happens, it's not end of the world. Throw away this work and start a new one. In fact, I would never suggest to throw away the work if you've done a mistake and start a new one. And that's on, based on my personal experience. If you've done something, you mucked it up some way, you closed your eyes and used red instead of black or something like that, and it seems like, okay, that's fine, that's it, it's ruined. It actually is not ruined. What you need to do is you need to really switch on your imagination, because this is when the best artworks are born, pretty much, when you've got that. I'll soften it up later, more into oblivion. Yeah, so that's what happens with me sometimes. The worst mistakes that you could do actually end up becoming your friends, and they're actually the ones that lead you in the direction that you would have never thought of. But it just really works, and it's something that you might actually like so much that you will be deliberately creating that effect in your later works. And that happened with me a few times. One situation is when I was creating a whole bunch of works for an exhibition, a personal show, and I was painting for about a year and a half because, they wanted quite a few pieces for the exhibit. And at the end, before I was supposed to drive them up to the gallery, this was a show in New Zealand, in Auckland, so I could just drive them up. I started to spray varnish them, and sometimes you can get that thing where it just sprays a dot out. So that's happened right in the middle of the artwork, right in the middle of the very plain, nice color. The splat just there. I can't get rid of it. Anything I try to do, it's just there. You can see it. When you when you move in front of it, when the light moves, it's just, and I'm like absolutely devastated. It was one of my larger pieces. I was so just, oh no, I can't believe this, and I don't have time to repaint it or do anything with it, because I have to pretty much take all the works down in a couple of days, just enough time for the varnish to dry. So I sat there and I looked at it, and then I just painted a bead over the spot of that drop and drew a really long string, and then it was so cool. It just looked so awesome. It was the kind of idea that I would have never come up with unless it was for that, for that mistake, that accident. And it was a very, very successful work because of that. And in the future, just, this was one of the techniques that I would use, without the spray splatter. But yeah, sometimes, life can create such interesting situations, and sometimes what we think are hard situations where we really need to persevere, we really need to do something, Maybe it's just life sort of pushing us in the right direction and telling us to open our eyes and open our imagination, and just, it's that situation where if life hands you a whole lot of lemons, you make lemonade. So it's that sort of a situation. So maybe this was just something like a push in the right direction. Okay, so now that I've smudged all of this out, I'm actually going to use my putty rubber. Again, I have a separate putty rubber for my pastels and charcoals, and separate for my graphite artworks, just because you don't want the contamination, especially of the stuff over your graphite works. So now I'm just going to use this to blend this even more by removing some of it. Okay, that should be sufficient enough for now, and then we can always do more later. Okay, next I'm going to do a very similar thing over the actual figure. So I'm just going to grab a little bit of brown and very softly just go over it like that. I don't want to deposit too much color, because there will be more layers that I will want to layer on, and if I completely pack the color in, I might not be able to build it up, with more and more layers. I'm just going to use this black brown stick for that. I am also going to use this paper to just lay down on, so that I'm not entirely smudging everything out of control. Again, I'm not going full strength, so I'm not packing everything in. And now, because I'm using the pencil, see how much more detail I can get into. You can go in any direction that's comfortable for you. You can do cross-hatching, you can do whatever you want. It doesn't really matter, because we will be smudging everything. But whatever's more comfortable, whatever's more convenient, you can just do that. No right and wrongs here. Now I'm going to go back for my smudge sticks. I'm going to move this away. And what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to create this very uniform sort of a blend. So it's still not the darkest it can go, but I don't really want everything to be very, very dark. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the white. So first I'm going to go over and add as much of this white in the air as possible, and then of course smudge it out as well. So with the smudge stick you are really helping to work the pastel into the tooth of the paper and smooth it out. Okay, so now it's time to start working on the wooden piece. I'm gonna put that down and I'm going to add some of the shadows like this. So these are the shadows that I can see there. Some more shadows, and on that side, you know, as it goes along, just keep adding shadows. At this stage I'm not working on the wooden texture, I'm just working on the, you know, marking down some of the shadows. So now that we're starting to see somewhat of a shape in there, we are going to start working on some brownish shade. So for this I'm going to use that, and simply because I don't have this color in the pencil form, which is okay. It's just a little bit of sort of the orangey browny sort of a shade just in some areas, just to give it that sort of a sunnier color. Carry some color across to there. Now I'm starting to look at the texture as well, so I'm just putting some of the lines that I can see of the, you know, the wooden patterns and so on. So this is a bit of ochre. Now just remember this thing, that the texture and the pattern is not as visible on the shadow side, at least not through this color. So I'm going to avoid putting too much of that color on the shadow side just yet. Now I'm going to do a very similar thing and sort of softly smudge it. Now you see I'm not smudging it completely out of shape, but I'm just softening these marks a little bit, sort of more pushing them into the paper rather than smudging. Okay, next I'm actually going to go in with a little bit of orange, and just in some areas I'm going to add some more of that brightness. So this is sort of a more of a orangey yellow. And I sort of carry on through in a very similar way, just adding a little bit more of that color. Okay, so now I think there's enough of that yellowy undertone for now. Now I'm gonna go in for some red. I know you'd say there's no red in the wood, but there actually is. It's quite a bit of red, but I'm not gonna be just covering the whole thing with red, just a couple of veins here and there. and for them to really just to smudge into the browns in some areas. But this is sort of more of a warmish brown. Now I'm starting to put these darker squiggles between the lighter shade. And you see now I'm going a little bit more sort of aggressively with it and adding more and more of it into the drawing. Some more smudging. Some areas I'm completely smudging in, like this one, and then some of them a little bit softer. So now you can kind of tell it's made out of wood, but it's still not looking very pretty and very detailed. Which means we still need to keep working. Add more, remove more, and so on. Now I'm gonna go in for this brown. And this one's a little bit darker. So with this one I'm going to be adding shadows and as well as patterns. Now again, giving it a little bit of a smudge, very lightly. Now I'm going to add a little bit of pink. And now some more smudging. Now I'm going to go for the dark blue to emphasize some of the shadow. So now I'm not working on the texture, I'm only working on the shadow. And also give it a bit of a smudge. And now of course onto the darkest color, which is black. So with this color I'm going to emphasize all the darkest shadows, and hopefully it will help me to create that real sort of a, volume. And now I'm going very slowly and smudging as soon as I've added some color in, so that I can see if I need to add any more shadows or any more patterns or anything like this, because this is a much more detailed work now. It's now that we're refining all of those little crevices. And details. You can also use this moment to really use the background to really bring out the figure as well. Okay. Okay, now it's time to use some white to bring out some highlights as well. So for this, at first I'm going to start using this off-white color, so white which is not too white, just a little bit white, and I'm just going to apply some of the highlights. And kind of go quite soft with them. I can also use this color to bring out some of the wooden texture as well, because it's not purely white. Can be perfect for that. Now I'm not smudging this one on these stages yet, because I want it to be more in place, and as further we progress, the less of the vigorous smudging we should have. Now I'm also going to do a little bit of a reflex here, it's a little highlight there and there, and then again more of that texture. A little bit more of the highlight here too. Some here and some here. I'm gonna go in for the white, and it's going to be just some of the stronger little highlights. So this is not wooden texture or anything like this. This is the actual highlights, the reflections. see if it's picking up quite a bit of dust of the other color, you can always just wipe it on your finger and go for it. But this is not all. Usually the chess figures are standing on this, like a sort of a green fabric, or sometimes it's black, but most of the time it's green. Of course you want to do it with pencils, or if you're using the pastels, make sure you use the corner very, very gently and very carefully. Reflections are quite funny things to draw and paint. Number one, it's sort of easy because you get the reflection of this, but at the same time it's a little bit tricky because you are seeing things from the bottom, so it's not like you've taken a photograph and then you copied it, you know, like on the computer doing a reflection. You're also seeing things from the bottom when you're looking into the reflection, so you always have to keep that in mind. If it's a little bit confusing, if you're not sure what it is that I'm talking about, you can take some kind of object, anything like a spoon or something, and put it on the glass, on the mirror, and then see that you don't actually see the spoon in the same way that you see it there, but you see the bottom of the spoon. It's very interesting. I actually was quite fascinated with things like that when I was studying at university, doing art, so I did a lot of artworks on reflective surfaces like mirrors and things like that, and yeah, it's quite interesting to work with. Okay, so now I'm gonna go for this sort of a yellowy orangey color. Some of that. For a reflection through here as well, so just getting a bit more of this. And now I'm actually going to use this, a little bit of that, to smudge this and also to create a little bit of the shadow. I don't want to deposit any of the black pastel because it's going to be too heavy for the reflection on the white surface. But if I just use the smudge stick that's already got a little bit of that, okay, it's coming along. Now getting a bit more of that warmer brown. And again, just using this darker smudge stick. Now I'm going to the white and really bring it out. Now I have this reflection, but you know how I wanted to haze this out in the front? So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to grab a paper towel fold it over. And just really soften it. So that it's barely visible. So there. I'm also going to just very briefly add a little bit more of the shadow. And remember, with reflections, the closer they are to the object, the more contrasted they will be, the clearer they would be. Also, how strong the reflection is would pretty much depend on the surface. So the darker the surface and the glossier it is, the more clearly you will see the reflection. So this is the finished sketch. And here, like I promised, the Russian chess set. It was inspired by many wars that Russia had to face during the numerous Swedish invasions. These wars became a very popular subject matter for books, ballads, and movies, and obviously it was interesting enough to inspire this artist to create this amazing chess set. You can see how incredible each figure is. Everything, including the board, is actually hand carved. All the details on the clothing, armor, all the designs for different figures are so true to life. And that what makes this set so super special. Or when you take it out, it actually feels like you are going to war and facing a real battle. It makes it so serious, but also more fun. And here are some more close-ups of the pieces. So, how was that? I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe, especially if you want to see more of this kind of content in the future. I would also like to say a big, huge thank you to all of my patrons who are already supporting me there. Without their help, many of these videos just would not be possible. And if you haven't checked it out, make sure to pop over there and see if you might find something that's just right for you. So, I hope you have a lovely day, and as always, thank you so much for drawing with me.